All right, I've been waiting a long time to finally make this video about US troops in Niger, Africa. If you've been following my updates almost daily now on Niger, Africa, I've kept saying US military, man, you guys have stayed silent this entire time. But now the US military finally says something. They've opened their mouths. It is time to relocate the U.S. military within Niger, Africa. Now, there's not a lot of updates on exactly why or what is happening. However, the Pentagon, and we're going to watch what they said and listen to what they said, they sort of gave us a little bit of insight on the relocation of troops. They also said, hey, U.S. military has not been able to fight the enemy in Niger, Africa. So this entire time, militant groups have been roaming free in Niger, Africa, which is terrible. Because that means even if the country decides to come together, it doesn't matter. This whole thing could fall apart. So let's go ahead and get into this, and then we'll look into some speculation. I'll show you some maps, and then we can all go get a popsicle. All right, here we go. So make sure we're all synced up and queued up here. Here's the Pentagon briefing on finally what the U.S. military is doing. And not to toot my own horn, but we've been pretty accurate on this entire thing.
On Niger, we've heard from officials that U.S. troops will be moved, repositioned within the country, and that some number of troops will be removed. Can you speak to that? And is there any threat perceived for U.S. troops at this time?
Sure. So in terms of Niger, there's no perceived threat in terms of any threat to U.S. troops.
First things first, very important point, and I apologize if it's a little laggy. Again, we're doing this live. No threat to U.S. troops. Been saying this forever. The U.S. military has stayed silent. If there was a threat, the U.S. military would have been out of there a month ago. They wouldn't have even dealt with this. The U.S. military has also never called this a coup. So, again, fact number one, there is no threat to the U.S. military. At least that's what they're telling us. So.
No threat of violence on the ground. This is simply a precautionary measure. So what we're doing right now is the department is repositioning some of our personnel and some of our assets from Airbase 101 in Niamey to Airbase 201 in Agadez.
And don't worry, I have a map for you guys. Okay, so if you guys are not aware, we have two major air bases in Niger, Africa, worth a lot of money. We have a lot of assets out there. So the capital here, this is where we have one drone base. They're relocating a lot of assets over here to Agadez. Now, she did say not all assets, but a lot of them. And we'll get into some speculation after this. But nonetheless, that's where they are relocating.
But it's simply precautionary. Our force posture hasn't changed in Niger. Our position remains the same, that we hope that the situation on the ground gets resolved diplomatically. But would just reemphasize that there's no immediate threat to U.S. personnel or violence on the ground.
Okay. Is the U.S. conducting counter-terror missions out of the country at this point?
At this time, we're still really confined to the bases. We are, again, moving personnel and assets, but we're not conducting joint operations or training with the Nigerian military.
Which is a huge thing for the U.S. military to admit. If I'm going to be honest with you, I sort of wish they didn't say that, and they could have been like, yeah, we're still on the ground, we're doing our thing. Like, sometimes the U.S. military is a little too transparent. It's not really a lie because the U.S. military is there, but again, that is the main mission as to why they are there, and they sort of threw themselves under the bus with that. Again, the main mission they're there for is to fight these militant groups. So just to reiterate, move from the capital up to Agadez. These are the drone bases, and as we saw before, and she said, we have these militant groups running rampant throughout the country. One of the best ways for these militant groups, and I can't say the names on here due to YouTube. I hope you guys are smart enough to know who I'm talking about when I say these militant groups. They're really bad people that we've been fighting now for close to 20 plus years. The number one way for these militant groups to recruit is to get people when they're at their lowest. Right now, the country of Niger still has the power and water shut off from neighboring countries, ECOWAS. Right now, you have a bunch of people who can't stand the West. This is the perfect formula for these militant groups to be like, you see, come help us out. There's been other countries around the world who've fought for what's the word I want to say? Fought for their freedom. I'll leave it at that. But you guys know what I'm saying. Another form of speculation here is that the U.S. military might know something that we don't. The Pentagon did say precautionary. If you guys forgot what's happening in the capital right now, especially with the French military base and embassy, let's go ahead and watch this clip.
Amping up the pressure on the French ambassador to Niger. The country's military government rescinded Sylvain Itté's diplomatic immunity on Thursday and threatened to deport him if he didn't leave the country. But the French president...
Hey, we just got a $10 donation. Let me acknowledge this real quick. Could you see the U.S. working with the junta if military groups ramp up attacks? Kind of choosing bad over evil? Yes, of course. I think the U.S. military would 100%, and I do think they are 100% working with the junta. I mean, let's be honest. The U.S. military literally trained the people who are currently in power. And at the end of the day, the U.S. military does not have the biggest stake economically like the French do with the uranium deposits in Niger. The U.S. military are there. They've been there for 20 plus years to fight these militant groups. So I for sure think that they would compromise and work with the junta. Not to bring it back to Afghanistan, but we did work with our enemy there to literally evacuate our own people. And we all know how that went. So again, the U.S. military I've seen do worse things than this.
President Emmanuel Macron continued to hold firm in his refusal.
Again, to reiterate, we're watching this clip to remind us as to why the U.S. military probably is pulling their assets the heck out of the capital.
To engage with the junta.
I speak to President Bazoum every day. We support him and we don't recognize the coup leaders. We aren't listening to their demands because they have no legitimacy to make them.
The show of support for Mohamed Bazoum sparked the ire of Niger.
Now look, the U.S. government has said, we acknowledge this as the real president. This is the president, but they're not out there publicly being like, bring him back. We don't acknowledge the junta. This is the president. What are you doing? We have troops there. Like, no, the U.S. military has been dead quiet. Again, it's been about a month. I did a couple videos ago where I actually showed there were no news articles on anything U.S. military, and finally we have something.
Niger's military leaders who immediately responded to the French president.
These comments are a further and flagrant interference in Niger's domestic affairs.
Most of the international community continues to recognize Bazoum as Niger's lawful leader, with West African bloc ECOWAS still considering military intervention to reinstate the president. But the military government can count on the support of large swathes of the population. On Friday, thousands of protesters gathered outside an army base in Niamey to demand the...
So this right here really is the reason why the U.S. military does not want any of this in front of their embassies, in front of their military bases. Also, a little bit of context too, and the U.S. military may have saved themselves here. In Chad, Africa, you actually had a French military base again get stormed due to another incident. So the U.S. military is aware that these outside sources could come in with some sort of either fake news or disinformation that might not even be true. And unfortunately, it's not this population's fault that they're susceptible to fake news. It just is the natural environment. You have militant groups walking around who can do whatever they want. You don't have internet, you don't have a lot of access to things, and word of mouth gets around very fast in these communities and neighborhoods. Now, the last thing I want to end on is this right here. Check out the tonality, and if you've been watching this, I've played this quite a bit. Check out the tonality of a month ago where the U.S. military, this was essentially the last public thing the U.S. military said about anything Niger, Africa, up until today.
Did you have a question?
Yeah. Yesterday in Niger, the military council that toppled President Bazoum said he could face the death penalty if found guilty of treason. Is it still your position that this isn't a coup?
So as you know, we continue to assess the ongoing situation in Niger. We are hoping that this can be resolved peacefully and through diplomatic means. We've come very close to say again that this is an attempted coup. I think by all means, from State Department, from DOD, from other levels of government, we are trying to work through this in a peaceful manner. As you know, Niger is quite a critical partner to us in the region, and so we are hopeful that we can resolve this in a diplomatic way.
There you go. So now that was about a month ago from the time of making this video, if you're watching this. And so now to go from that to, hey, we're moving assets out of the capital, again, the Pentagon is saying we don't have a major threat. It's precautionary, but nonetheless, there obviously is some sort of intel or something saying get those assets the heck out of there. Again, if we're going to do the speculation game, I'm probably going to speculate that they just don't want some random person to be like, oh my gosh, a U.S. military convoy hit me. Let's go storm them, which is, again, disinformation, and these countries are very susceptible to this. Something else I want to mention that hasn't really been talked about a lot is that there are U.S. Marines stationed here at the U.S. Embassy. Now, this is not a functioning embassy, but nonetheless, it hasn't been totally abandoned. And if you've been watching my videos, the U.S. Embassy is here. Unironically, the French Embassy is right next door. So I pray for these Marines over here if something does pop off. But again, the Pentagon is saying there is no threat. Hopefully, hopefully this doesn't happen, where if the French embassy does get attacked, the U.S. embassy doesn't get sucked into it. And I always like to point this out. I think it's so cool. I mean, look, the U.S. embassy, man, they got a pool. Must be nice to work in Niger, huh? Anyway, that's essentially what's going on. We have a change of mission posture. There really is no mission going on right now. It's just the U.S. military waiting and waiting. And the longer we wait, day by day, you have these militant groups who are going to get stronger. They're going to recruit more. They're going to be able to cause more issues. Because even if, again, the president does come back in, these militant groups now have managed to get behind enemy lines and roam wherever they want to roam and cause even more issues for the country of Niger. And not only that, other countries in ECOWAS. So that's what's going on. I don't want to continue to further speculate too much. I like to try giving you exactly what's happening. Now, that's pretty much it. That's the show. I'm going to be posting this video. If you want to help me out, this helps me out a ton. Please comment on my posted video. That's where I can actually see all your comments. We can respond and talk. It helps me out a ton. Hey, thank you, Eric Mason, for joining the membership squad. Again, please, guys, comment on the posted video. It helps me out a ton, and then, we can push the channel and push the conversation. So I'm going to keep you guys updated. We sort of got sucked into this news story. I don't know how I became the Niger Africa reporter, but that's sort of what's going on. I love helping you guys out, sending you guys knowledge, giving you guys the news, and I hope this all resolves peacefully. All right, we'll see you guys later. Love all you guys. Please comment on the posted video. Thank you.